Good evening, everybody. In the last session, we discussed the summary of our Spring Boot. So whatever the topics that we have learned in the Spring Boot that we discussed in the last session. And yesterday, I have asked you one question: which dependency injection is better? Whether it is setter injection better, or constructor injection is better, or field injection is better. So did you guys done any analysis for that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right. So can you guys tell me which dependency injection is better?
In sir, setter constructor injection is better because whenever object creates, injection is happening.
Constructor injection is better.
Actually, it depends upon the requirement. If requirement is a partially injection, then we should go with setter injection. If requirement is we have to fully implementation, then we should go with constructor injection.
Okay. Setter injection means injecting the dependent object into target object by using setter method. Okay. And constructor injection means injecting the dependent object into target object by using constructor. Field injection means injecting the dependent object into target object by using variable. That is called field injection. So let me take one simple example. New Spring Starter project. So here I'm creating my 7th application, Spring Boot DI application. With the dependency injection, I'm creating one application. I'm not selecting any starter. Even though we have not selected any starter, by default, normal starter, boot starter will come, which will provide the support to develop our application by using Spring Boot. So whatever the configurations, whatever the settings that are required to develop a standalone application, those are settings we are going to get as part of this boot starter. So you don't need to write any additional settings to work with this boot, right? So boot starter dependency is coming and a test dependency also coming by default. Perfect. Now here we got the start class. We already discussed that it is the entry point for boot application execution. And we are getting the properties file. We can configure our application messages and the data source properties in this application.properties file. Perfect. Now, I'm going to create one class. Assume that my class is something like report DAO. So I'm going to create a class with a name called DAO. DAO means the class which contains the database implementation. Now, in this class, I'm writing one simple method, public string get name by ID. So I'm passing integer user ID as a parameter. Based on that user ID, it has to return some name. If user ID double equals to 100, return the name as something like John. Okay. Else if user, some dummy logic I'm writing, guys, because I'm not making any DB communication now. In future, we are going to make the DB communication to get the data. So John Smith, otherwise I'm going to return name not found. Name not found. So like this, I'm writing one simple DAO class. This class is containing a method. Currently, I'm writing conditional based value returning. So in future, we will retrieve the data from the database by using data JPA. Currently, our data JPA is not started. So I'm writing normal logic in this method. So this is my DAO method. Now I'm going to create one service class. I'm going to create a service class inside the service package. So this is something like report service. I'm creating a class with a name called report service. Inside the report service, I want to write a method public void print name, get print name, public void print name. It is taking user ID as a parameter. Public void print name, integer user ID I'm passing as a parameter. So based on the user ID, I need to get the data. That data I'm going to get from the DAO. So for that, I'm going to inject private report DAO, that is report DAO. Now, report DAO object I want to inject. Based on that, I'm going to get the name. Report DAO dot get name by ID. So whatever the user ID we have, we are passing that user ID and we are getting that name. All right. So whatever the name I am getting, I'm going to print that name, system.out.println name by ID. So whatever the name we will pass as a input for the method. So that name, whatever the ID we will pass as input for the method, that ID, it is passing to service layer method and it is getting the name from the DAO. So service layer is calling the DAO layer method and getting the name and printing the name on the console. All right. Now I want to go for my start class and I want to get the service object. All right. So here run method is getting called from the main method. Run method is entry point for the application execution. Lot of code is executing internally in the run method, which will create IOC container, which will print the banner, which will call the runners. Can you guys tell me what is the return type of the run method? Can you guys tell me what is the return type of the run method? Come on, guys. What is the return type of the run method?
Configurable application
It
context.
depends based on
Configuration
the
application.
Configurable application context.
Configuration application context.
Application context. So this method is returning configurable application context. So by using this configurable application context, I'm going to get my bean object. Context.getBean, I want to get the service object. Report service.class. Report service.class. Right. So it is giving me a report service object. Now I am calling report service dot print name. I'm passing 100 as a input for the method. Okay. I'm going to execute my application. So if you get any error, we need to understand the error and we need to fix the error. Let's run this. Run as boot application. I'm trying to run this project. Project is failed. So it is saying that no such bean definition exception. No qualifying bean of type report service is available. So can you guys tell me what is the reason for this problem? I'm getting some exception in my project. So can you tell me what is this exception? No such bean definition exception. No qualifying bean of type report service available. No qualifying bean of type report service is available. What is the meaning of that? So I'm asking IOC container to give me report service object. So first of all, report service is a Spring Bean or report service is not a Spring Bean. Report service is not a Spring Bean. So I'm asking IOC to give me the report service object. Report service class is available in the project, but that class is not represented as a Spring Bean. That's why IOC container saying that, boss, I don't know any bean with a name report service. So it is a normal Java class. So I want to represent this class as a Spring Bean. To represent this class as a Spring Bean, I will use one annotation called @service. I'm using one annotation called @service. Perfect. @service annotation I'm using. Then run the program. Run as boot application. Run as boot application. Right. Now I am getting null pointer exception. Can you guys tell me why we are getting this null pointer exception? What is the reason to get this null pointer exception? Guys, what is the reason to get this null pointer exception? Do you know why we are getting null pointer exception? Do you know the reason why we are getting null pointer exception? Dependency injection is not happening. Variable is not initialized. So I'm trying to get the service bean object and I'm calling the service bean method print name. When I call this service bean method, it is calling the DAO method. So here DAO variable, is this variable is initialized or this variable is not initialized? This variable is initialized or this variable is not initialized? Not initialized. So that means default value, null dot method, null pointer exception. Null dot method, null pointer exception is available. That's why we are getting null pointer exception. So I want to inject an object into this variable. Okay, I want to perform the dependency injection. In how many ways we can perform the dependency injection now? In how many ways we can perform the dependency injection now? 3 ways. 2 ways are. 3 ways. We can do that by using setter. We can do that by using constructor. We can do that by using field also. For example, if this variable is having a setter method, right? Like a setter method, public void setter, report to DAO. I'm going to take report to DAO object as a parameter, and this dot report to DAO is equal to report to DAO. Fine. Public void set report to DAO, report DAO object I'm taking. This dot report to DAO is equal to report to DAO. I'm taking a setter method. I want to perform dependency injection by using setter method. Then I can write auto void annotation here. Okay. So if I write auto void annotation at the setter method, then what will happen? Setter injection will happen. Let us see. System.out.println set report to DAO method called. Set report to DAO method called. Observe. Let's run this application now. Right click, run as boot application. You can see the output. Error. Report service required of bean type report to DAO that could not be found. So I'm trying to perform auto wiring. So by using this annotation @auto void. So auto wiring is successful, auto wiring is failure. Auto wiring is successful or auto wiring is failure? Guys, failed. Auto wiring is failed. So what is the reason? Can you check it? Report to DAO could not be found. So report to DAO is represented as a Spring Bean, or it is represented as normal Java class? It is normal Java class. Can IOC use a normal Java class to perform the dependency injection? Can IOC use normal Java class to perform dependency injection? No, it should be a Spring Bean. So the class which contains the database logic, we will represent them as a repositories. Right, you can use a component also to remake that class as a Spring Bean. So we can represent the class as a Spring Bean by using repository annotation also. We can represent that class as a Spring Bean by using repository annotation also. All right. Now run as boot application. See the console. Now can I say setter method got called? So setter method got called. How IOC understood that it has to call the setter method to perform the dependency injection? How IOC understood that it has to call the setter method to perform the dependency injection? Because of auto wiring. Where I have specified auto wiring? At the setter method. If you specify auto wiring at the setter method, then it will perform the dependency injection through setter. That is called setter injection. Are you guys clear? Auto void annotation at the setter method. It is doing setter injection. Now I'm writing one constructor. So system.out.println 0 param constructor. System.out.println, I'm writing 0 param constructor. Okay, this constructor will be called or this constructor will not be called now? Guys, I have a question. This constructor will be called or this constructor will not be called? Will be called or will not be called? Will be called. Why? Because for report service object should be created. Na? For report service object should be created. Na? So for that it will use a default constructor to create the object. So let's go for application. Run as Java application or Spring Boot application. Anything is fine. Now you see 0 param constructor is called and the setter method is also called. Why the 0 param constructor is called? 0 param constructor is called to create the object for the report service. Report service is our target class. And we have used setter method and with auto wiring So it is calling setter method. It is performing setter injection. Are you guys clear with the setter injection with auto wiring? Are you guys clear with the setter injection with auto wiring? Perfect. Now I will remove this setter injection. I will remove this setter injection and I will write only constructor injection. Public report to service, and I'm going for report to DAO, which is report to DAO, and this dot report to DAO is equal to report to DAO. Okay, this is my parameterized constructor. System.out.println param constructor. Param constructor. For this constructor, I'm using auto wiring. For this constructor, I'm using auto wiring. So can I call it as a constructor overloading? Guys, can I call this as a constructor overloading? Yes, it is called as a constructor overloading. In the report service class, I'm writing 0 param constructor and I'm writing parameterized constructor. For parameterized constructor, I'm writing @auto void. Now, which constructor will be used to create the object for the report service class represented as a string bean? By using @service annotation, we represented this class as a string bean. Report service class represented as a string bean by using @service. Are you clear, guys? Fine. Now here, which constructor will be used? 0 param constructor or parameterized constructor to create the object? Parameterized constructor, because we have given auto void annotation. Run as boot application. Which constructor is calling? Parameterized constructor is calling to create the object. Because, so when you give @auto void annotation, in these two constructors, this constructor will get the priority to create the object. Suppose if I comment auto void annotation, then which constructor will be called to create the object? Now I have removed auto void annotation from here. Which constructor will be called to create the object of this class now? Report service class is available. For this class is represented as a service annotation. That means this is a string bean. String bean means object should be created. There is a 0 param constructor and there is a param constructor. Which constructor it will use to create the object? Run as a Spring Boot application. When I run a Spring Boot application, then you can see 0 param constructor. So when there are two constructors available, one is 0 param, another one is a parameterized constructor, it is calling 0 param constructor to create the object. Suppose if I specify @auto void annotation, then IOC is using this parameterized constructor to create the object for the class. Are you able to understand my point? Are you guys able to understand my point? So when you have 0 param and parameterized without auto wiring, then 0 param constructor will be used to create the object. If you have two constructors and one constructor is having auto wiring, that constructor will get the priority. Now, for example, I will remove 0 param and I will write only parameterized constructor without auto wiring. I'm not writing auto void annotation. I'm just writing a parameterized constructor. Will it create the object? So here, you know, in the Java, when we write our own constructor, then the Java compiler will not add the constructor. So when we write our constructor, Java compiler will not add the constructor. So now my class is having only parameterized constructor. Does this IOC container having any other option to create the object for the class? IOC container having any other option to create the object for the class? No. IOC container should call only this constructor to create the object. Whether you write auto void annotation or if you don't write the auto void annotation, IOC will call this constructor. Okay. When your class is having single parameterized constructor, @auto void annotation is optional. Why? Because our class is represented as a string bean. So to create the object for this class, it has to call this parameterized constructor because there is no 0 param constructor. Suppose if I write the 0 param constructor, then IOC will use which constructor? IOC always will prefer 0 param constructor to create the object. but I am removing the 0 param constructor. I am writing only parameterized constructor. Whether you write at the rate auto void or you don't write at the rate auto void, by default it will call this constructor to create the object. Now run the application, run as Spring Boot application. Now can you see param constructor is called? So constructor injection is happening in the project, or constructor injection is not happening in the project. Constructor injection happening in the project, or constructor injection is not happening in the project. Happening in the project. So now tell me, constructor injection is happening, auto-void annotation is available or auto-void annotation is not available? Auto-void annotation is available or not available? Not available. So why auto-void annotation is optional in this scenario? Do you know the reason why it is optional in this scenario? Because our class is having single parameterized constructor. So IOC don't have any other option to create the object. That's why it is calling our parameterized constructor to create the object. If I write 2 constructors, IOC will go for 0 param constructor to create the object. Are you guys clear? So if you write the setter method will be called or setter method will not be called? Public void set report to DAO. Setter method will be called or will not be called? I'm writing a setter method. Here I'm writing the setter method. Setter method will be called or will not be called? Will not be called. Because constructor will be called to create the object. Setter method, if you write the auto-void annotation, then only setter method will be called. Otherwise, setter method will not be called. See here, only constructor injection happening. Now, only constructor injection is happening. So setter method is not calling. When this setter method will be called, guys? In which scenario this setter method will be called? This setter method will be called when you write the auto-void annotation at the setter method level. That means when you write the auto-void annotation at the setter method level, then only you will call this setter method. Fine. Now, for example, I'm writing auto-void annotation at the variable level. I'm writing auto-void annotation at the variable level. Then what will happen? I'm writing auto-void annotation at the variable level. What will happen? Setter method will be called or will not be called? Constructor will be called or will not be called? I want you to respond to my question. In this scenario, I'm writing auto-wiring annotation at the variable level. So tell me, which dependency injection will be performed by IOC container? Which dependency injection will be performed by IOC container in this scenario? Huh? Which dependency injection will be performed by IOC in this scenario? Field injection, because I am writing the annotation at the variable level. So field injection. Constructor will be called or constructor will not be called? Constructor also will be called because IOC has to create the object for the class. IOC has to create the object for the class. So fine, let's go to the application and let us see. Run as boot application. Now constructor is executed. Constructor is executed. Okay. If I write setter method also, if I am having auto wiring, then what will happen? I'm writing auto wiring at the 3 places. Will it give any problem? Will it give any problem? Will it give any problem or it will not give any problem? No problem. But is it recommended to write like this? For single variable, field injection, constructor injection, setter injection, is it recommended to write like this or it is not recommended to write like this? Okay, now run this application, run as boot application. First constructor injection is executed, then setter injection is also executed. Because, so to create the object for the report service class, it is having only one constructor. So definitely it has to call this constructor. And we are having a setter method with the auto wiring. So it has to call the setter method also. And we have the auto wire annotation at the variable level. 3 injections. 3 times we are initializing the same variable. 3 times we are initializing the same variable. So is it recommended or this is not recommended? Is this recommended approach or it is not recommended approach? Not recommended approach. But what most of the people will do in the companies is they will write like this because it is easy. If you want to perform the dependency injection, just to declare the variable and write the auto void annotation. So dependency injection will happen or dependency injection will not happen in this scenario. Guys, dependency injection will happen in this scenario or dependency injection will not happen in this scenario. Will happen in this scenario. Which type of dependency injection will happen? Which type of dependency injection will happen? Field injection will happen. So do you know how field injection will work internally? Do you know how field injection will work internally? How field injection will work internally? Reflection API. So this variable is a private variable. So this private variable will be accessed outside of the class by using reflection API and it will initialize this variable. So can I say it is against the OOPS principles? Can I say it is against OOPS principle? So most of the programmers will use field injection in the project without knowing the side effect. So whenever we use the field injection, internally IOC container is using reflection API to perform the dependency injection. It is violating our OOPS principles. Hence, it is not recommended. Hence, it is not recommended. Are you getting my point? Why field injection is not recommended? Because it is against our OOPS principles. That's why field injection is not recommended to use in the project. But it is easy. Within the single line, we can perform our dependency injection. Within the single line, we can perform our dependency injection. Just write the variable and declare one annotation. Then dependency injection will happen for the project. Most or 90% of the people will do like this in the project. But if you see in the Google, if you see the Google articles, they will say that. So field injection, why field injection not recommended? Why field injection is not recommended? The reason why field injection is prone upon are follows. You cannot create immutable objects. Your classes have tightly coupling. Field injection is not recommended, Spring MVC. Stop using field injection in the Spring applications. Field injection is not recommended. Spring field injection, it's a drawbacks. Constructor injection versus field injection. Non-recommended field injection inspection. Why not to auto wire? So there are some drawbacks that they have explained. Field injection, why it is not recommended. Why it is not recommended. Are you guys clear with my point? So it is going to violate our OOPS principles when you write auto wire annotation at the variable level. But as it is simple, most of the people will follow this approach only to perform the dependency injection. Now, instead of doing like this, the recommended approach is here, it's better to go for constructor. It's better to go for constructor, right? So here, I'm going to specify report to DAO. So this dot report to DAO is equal to DAO. So whenever my target object, whenever my service class object is creating, immediately dependent object also will be injected. This is the recommended way to do that. This is the recommended way to do that. Instead of the field injection, it is recommended way to do that. Are you guys clear? Are you guys clear? Why field injection is not recommended? Field injection is violating OOPS principles. That's why we will go for constructor. So when you go for constructor, in order to create the report service, it has to create the report DAO. First report DAO object will be created. That report DAO object will be injected to report service. Report service. It is not violating any OOPS principles. It will use a constructor to create the perform the dependency injection. Now, if you go for setter, public void setter report to DAO. So when you write the setter method, so IOC will call the setter method automatically, or IOC will not call the setter method automatically. Guys, IOC will call the setter method automatically whenever we have. IOC will not call the setter method automatically. I have a variable. For that variable, I have a setter method. If I remove this parameter as a constructor, IOC will call the setter method, or IOC will not call the setter method. IOC will not call the setter method. If IOC did not call the setter method, this variable will not be initialized. If this variable is not initialized, then we will get a null pointer exception. So there is a chance of getting the null pointer exceptions if you don't perform the setter injection properly. There is a chance of getting the null pointer exception if you don't perform the setter injection properly. Are you guys getting my point? Are you guys getting my point? There is a chance of getting the null pointer exception if you don't write the auto-void annotation. If somebody remove the auto-void annotation at the setter method level, there is a chance of getting null pointer exception. But if you go for constructor, if you write a constructor like this, is there any chance of getting null pointer exception? If you go for constructor injection, is there any chance of getting null pointer exception? No, because first it has to create the object, then only it is going to, first it has to inject the object, then only it is going to create the service object. Without creating the DAO object, service object cannot be created. So now tell me, whenever we are working on the project, which injection is recommended? Setter, field, or constructor? Which dependency injection is recommended? Setter injection is recommended, or field injection is recommended, or constructor injection is recommended? Constructor is mostly recommended. Constructor injection is mostly recommended because by the time our object is created, our dependent object will be ready. So without having the dependent object, our target object will not be created. That's why it is recommended to go for constructor injection. Recommended to go for constructor injection. Constructor injection. Sir, then what is a setter? So if you want to inject your dependent object through setter, then you need to write the auto-void annotation manually. If you don't write the auto-void annotation, then dependent object will not be injected, then you will get a null pointer exception. If you don't write the auto-void annotation at the setter method level, then you will get a null pointer exception here. If you go for field injection, it is simple. Writing the auto-void at the field level is very simple. With a one-line dependency injection will happen, but internally it is violating the OOPS principles. Internally it is violating the OOPS principles. Internally it is violating our OOPS principles. Got my point? So always try to use constructors to inject your dependents so that null pointer exceptions will not occur. Null pointer injection will not occur. All right. If you use the field injection, most of the people will use the field injection, but internally it will use that because this variable is a private variable. As per Java OOPS, what is the meaning of a private? As per Java OOPS, what is the meaning of the private? Private means should be accessed only within the class. IOC container will access our variable outside the class and will inject this variable. I have given the example also how reflection API can access private variables outside of the class. That is not recommended. All right. So from now, whenever I want to perform the dependency injection, I will go for constructor injection like this. I will go for constructor injection like this. So dependency injection will happen or will not happen. Dependency injection will happen. What will happen if we violate the OOPS principle? Nothing will happen. All right. Accessing the private variables outside of the class is against OOPS, right? That is violating the OOPS. If you write the variable with the auto void, that variable will be initialized with the reflection API. Private variable is accessed outside of the class, which is violating the OOPS. So what is the impact if you violate the OOPS? No impact. So as it is using reflection API to load the class to use your variables, performance will be degraded. Performance will be degraded if you use the reflection API. Okay, perfect. So try to favor constructor injection instead of the field injection and setter injection whenever you are performing the dependency injection. Whenever class is having single parameterized constructor, do I need to write the auto void annotation or I no need to write the auto void annotation? Do I need to write the auto void annotation or I no need to write the auto void annotation? No, no need to write it. It is optional. Why? Because this class is a Spring Bean. IOC has to create the object for this class. IOC having only one constructor, there is no other option for the IOC to create the object. So definitely IOC will use our constructor to create the object. Our constructor is expecting the dependent object as a parameter. Our constructor is expecting dependent object as a parameter. So it is going to perform that. If you have multiple constructors, then you need to tell that. Yeah, perfect. All right. And one more thing, can I use auto void annotation at the primitive types integer I? Can I specify auto void here? So can I do like this? Auto void, is there any use? For a primitive data type, if I am using auto wiring, is there any use of that? No use. Auto wiring should be used at the reference to data types only. Auto wiring should be used at the reference to data types only. All right. Okay. And the next one. So you may get this question, which dependency injection is better? You need to tell them that field injection will use reflection API internally, not recommended. In the setter injection, if you don't use auto void, there is a chance of getting null pointer exception. When you go for constructor, so definitely IOC is going to call the constructor to create the object. And one more interview question they will ask you, what is the difference between @component versus @service versus @repository? @component versus @service versus @repository. All right. Now we are using here service class and we are using repository. Instead of repository, can I use a component only here? Instead of repository for the DAO class, can I use @component? Is it valid or invalid? Will it represent the object as a Spring Boot? Will it represent as a Spring Bean or will not represent as a Spring Bean? Valid or invalid? Test this application. Run as a Spring Boot application. Run as Spring Boot application. Injected or not injected? So DAO class also representing as a Spring Bean by using @component. Here I have a service. Instead of service, can I use @repository here? Is it valid or invalid? Report service class I'm representing as a Spring Bean by using @repository annotation. Is it valid or invalid? Test it. boot application. No exception, it is valid. Then what is the difference? Component is representing our class as a Spring Bean. Service also representing our class as a Spring Bean. Repository also representing our class as a Spring Bean. Then what is the difference between these three annotations? Is there any difference or there is no difference? Come on, guys. Yeah, let us see the documentation. What Spring is telling about these three annotations. So let's go to first @ component. I'm going for @ component annotation. Go to this component, open the code. Component annotation available from Spring 2.5 indicates that. Can you read this, guys? Can you read this? What it is telling that? It is indicating that an annotated class is a component. Such classes are considered as candidates for auto detection when using annotation-based configuration and class path scanning. So whenever a class is having @ component, that class will be considered as a auto detection candidate when the annotation-based configuration is available. All right. Now let's go for @ service. Service. See the documentation of service. This is also from 2.5. What they are saying about service? This is a general purpose annotation, general purpose stereotype annotation to represent as a Spring Bean. This annotation serves as a specialization of component, allowing for implementation classes to be auto-detected through class path scanning. That means whenever you write a service annotation, suppose if this reported DAO is an interface, this interface implementation classes, it will scan to perform the dependency injection. Are you guys understanding the point? So this annotation serves as a specialization for component, allowing for implementation classes to be auto-detected through class path scanning. Whenever you write a service annotation at the class level, whatever the dependent variables are there, even though if it is, last time we have taken iEngine, even though if it is a interface variable, it will identify the implementation class for this to perform the dependency injection. It is a generic purpose annotation. It is a specialized annotation of the component. Whenever I am writing a @ service at the class level, now here report DAO is available. Instead of this, I'm going to create one interface. So I report DAO. iReport DAO interface is having a method like this. Now, iReport DAO having a method. Now it is going to have a method. Now let's go for report DAO IMPL class. Report DAO IMPL class is available. Now report DAO IMPL class implementing the DAO interface. Implements iReport DAO. Now in the service class, I will not use the DAO. I will use iReport DAO. Are you guys getting my point? Am I writing class variable? Am I writing interface variable? Am I writing a class variable? Am I writing a interface variable? I'm writing a interface variable. Okay. So it is a specialized annotation which is going to identify implementation classes for the dependency injection. See here, dependency injection completed. Dependency injection completed. That means this service is having a specialization of the component. It is identifying the implementation classes as part of auto detection. Are you getting my point? So how IOC is understood that it has to inject a DAO IMPL class object to this variable, even though I am giving the interface as a data type. It is scanning the class path. So what are the classes available? What are the interfaces available? Which interface implementation class object is available? It is going to do that process. It is going to do that process. Understood, guys? Understood my point? Okay. Next one. Here, I'm writing @repository. So whenever I go for @repository, what is the meaning of that? Repository is also used to represent our class as a Spring Bean. Let us go for our repository and see what it is telling. This repository available from 2.0 itself. Component service available from 2.5 of the Spring, but repository available from 2.0 only. What is this repository annotation? Come on. A class thus annotated is eligible for Spring translation when used in the conjunction with persistence exception translation post processor. So whenever data access exception occurred, this repository annotation is responsible to translate that exception. So it is recommended to use this annotation at the persistence layer. It is recommended to use this annotation at the persistence layer. So that means whenever this annotation is used at the persistence layer, if any data access exception occur, it is going to translate that exception. So this is a generic type, specialized annotation of the component. So all are used to represent a class as a Spring Bean, but every annotation is having its own functionality. Component, service, repository. Component is used to represent the class as a Spring Bean. Service is also used to represent the class as a Spring Bean. Repository also used to represent a class as a Spring Bean. Component is a general purpose. Service is specialized annotation of the component. Repository is specialized annotation of the component. Repository will translate the data access exceptions. Service will scan for implementation classes for the dependency injections. Component is a general purpose annotation to perform dependency injections. Understood? When you are writing the business layer, we will make that class as a service Spring Bean by using service. When we are writing the persistence layer, we will make that class as a Spring Bean by using repository. When we are writing normal generic classes like email utils, password utils and all, we will make them as Spring Beans by using component. Now tell me, when to go for component, when to go for service, when to go for repository. You got the clarity? All are called as stereotype annotations to represent Java class as a Spring Bean. @component, @service, @repository, all are stereotype annotations to represent our Java class as a Spring Bean. All are stereotype annotations to represent Java class as a Spring Bean. Are you guys clear? Are you guys clear with my point? Perfect. Stereotype annotation means general purpose annotations which are used to represent Java class as a Spring Bean. If you see repository, it is from which package? Stereotype package. If you go for service annotation from which package? Stereotype. Stereotype annotations nothing but those are general purpose annotations to represent our Java classes as Spring Beans. Stereotype annotations are nothing but general purpose annotations to represent our Java class as Spring Bean. These annotations are used to represent our Java classes as Spring Beans. Those are called as stereotype annotations. Component, service, repository. Okay. Next one. Which type of dependency injection is recommended in the projects? Which type of dependency injection is recommended in the project? Mostly constructor. Mostly constructor because we don't get the null pointer exceptions. Dependent objects, 100% dependent object will be injected into target. If dependent object is injected, then only target object will be created. Otherwise, target object will not be created. %, dependent object will be injected, then only target object will be created. Otherwise, target object will not be created. Setter injection is optional. If you write auto void annotation at the setter method, then only it will perform. Otherwise, setter injection will not perform. Otherwise, setter injection will not perform. Are you clear? Are you clear? Yes, perfect. Good. So fine, guys. So all our questions are clarified and the Spring Boot summary we have completed. What is the difference between component, service, and repository? Component versus service versus repository annotations. This is also clarified. Okay. Next, we need to understand how to communicate with the database by using our Spring Boot applications. For that, we are going to learn data JPA. So before going to start the data JPA, all of you have database softwares installed, MySQL database. All of you have MySQL database installed. Yeah, perfect. So we need to understand data JPA. So we are going to start with data JPA from tomorrow. In the tomorrow session, I'm going to explain the importance of data JPA. The data JPA introduction we are going to understand in the tomorrow session. All right, good guys. Anybody having any questions? So you can ask me now.
Hello, sir.
Sir, I have a question, sir. Like when you said the difference between @component and @service, but instead of @service at that place, even if I use @component also, the implementation class are injected, no, sir.
It will inject, sir. This is a specialized annotation. It will be injected. Whatever the behavior
There
is.
is no difference between @component and @service, right?
Right. So there is no difference. This is just a specialized annotation. So whenever you are writing a business layer, service layer with the business logic, then people will use the @service annotation. But functionality wise, both are same.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah, but repository annotation is having a special behavior.
Right, sir. It translates that exceptions, right?
Correct. Correct.
Hello, sir.
When will you upload this video, sir? Past
Sir,
video.
you will
Can you
share the
mention-
source code, sir. I will practice it.
Can you
Madam,
update the notes
Simple
also?
example,
So
simple
whatever you
thing. I'm not developing any rocket science
Theory
application. These are very small applications that you should be able to do it on your own.
Yes, sir.
You got my point. If you are taking my source code,
Can
then
you-
what is the use of joining the course?
Can you provide that MySQL to install the link?
Sir, you can just download in the Google, sir. Download MySQL software. Simple,
Sir,
guys.
when you will upload this video, sir?
Let me tell you, don't behave like a school kids. You are a professional. You are learning the Spring Boot. So after explaining the concept and writing the example live coding in the class, again people are asking share source code. If I share the source code, then what you will learn, what you will practice? What is the use of joining the course? If I am giving the code also, when you will think and you will write the code on your own?
If I refer the in future, because sometimes we miss, right? At the time, if the
You have a group
No,
created
sir.
for
We
discussion.
will, sir, write the code on our own.
Sir, we have, if you stuck somewhere, if you have a problem, group is created, you can talk to me in the class, because if I give my code right, that means you are killing your thinking capacity. Your thinking capability will be dead. You will not think if I give my source code. You understand? You will be the loser if you see my source code. Your brain will not work in future. Tomorrow, when you face a problem, can you ask your manager to give the source code in the company? When you get a problem, what you need to do? Will you ask the team lead to share the source code? Please grow up, guys.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, when we use @required arg constructor and annotation.
@required annotation means if that variable is required to be injected, then we will go for required annotation. That nowadays we don't use that.
Yes, I said required arg constructor annotation.
Required arg constructor, that is a Lombok annotation, sir, not the Spring.
Okay, sir. And sir, please provide assignments for us. So
Sure, sir. I will give you. I will. So now we are understanding the fundamentals, right? For the fundamentals, I can't give you any assignment. So once the DB communications are started, then I will give you the assignment for that.
Sir, can you upload this video today, sir? I need to attend one interview, sir. I missed 20 minutes of your class today.
Sure.
Yesterday's Infi is having the drive, sir.
Okay.
Hi, sir. I'm getting I'm getting one error in while I'm doing the dot class and dot get name of I'm using this IOC object is there, right, sir? Application context.
You share your screen and show me that.
Okay, sir. Now 1 second.
Ram Muchu, 1 minute, guys. Ram Muchu, what is your doubt?
Sir, you can see my screen, right?
It's loading. Yeah, it's loaded. Sir, it is saying that port number is already in use 8080. You created a, so go to build.gradle file. Remove that web starter, because we are not using the web starter now.
This one, sir.
Remove the web there.
No, actually but web, why it is not automatically it should add dependencies here and it should
1 minute. Go to application and properties file and change the port number.
Okay, sir. Application by properties. It's empty file.
Server.port, you need to write it. Whenever you add that web dependency, it will take the Tomcat server with 8080. Maybe you are using Oracle database in your system. Right?
Which command I need to write? Server?
.port. Give 8081. Save it. Yeah, run that. Update your project once, refresh. Yeah, run it.
Build failed import.
Clean that.
Clean the project first.
This is only right. Refresh.
Sir, first thing, sir, Rajshekhar, we are not discussing about the web starters, right? Why are you creating a web application now?
No, I want to check the reference, which reference is coming. So there I got stuck, sir.
Delete this project, recreate it. File new Spring Starter project.
Ashok sir.
Next, click on next, directly finish. Yeah.
Hello sir.
1 minute, sir. Let him complete. Right click on that and click on close unrelated projects. Right click on that. Close unrelated projects. Close unrelated projects. Click on it. Okay. Yes. Now run this application. Right click, run as boot application. Yeah, it is running now.
Yes.
Yeah, do this. Web application I have not explained yet. When we go for web MVC, then you will understand that.
No, actually, I'm only this class reference I am executed. So I want to check that web application reference is coming or not. So only configurable annotation application context it
Yeah,
must.
then you need to add that web starter dependency. Then you can check that.
I'm using Gradle, so web starter I should use in the build and Gradle here only.
Yes, you need to configure there.
Here only these two places.
Yes, right. You just need to configure Spring Boot starter -web dependency. That's it. Not web starter test -web. There only you need to keep. You need to refresh your project. It has to download the depend. No need to configure tester.
Okay.
Just right click on the project, refresh it. Refresh Gradle. Gradle refresh the project. Then it will download the dependency. So you need to take the return type. You did not save the Gradle file. Save that file. Then refresh the project. Now you need to store that return type into the variable. Then you need to print get class.get name. Yeah. Next one, guys.
Hello sir.
Can you please brief the limitations of use of auto wiring?
Limitations of using auto wiring. So that means program.
Disadvantage of auto wiring.
Disadvantage of auto wiring is programmer will not have any control on the auto wiring. It will be completely managed by IOC container.
Yes sir. Another thing is the primitive data type.
It will not support for primitive data types. That is a limitation. And when you write the auto wiring annotation, right, programmer will not have any control for the dependency. Automatically, Spring will create the object, IOC will create the object, and IOC will inject that object. You can't control that.
In the project @configuration is there, no sir, for configuration files.
In the Spring Boot, you no need to write it.
Okay, sir. In Spring also it is working, sir. Even though I'm not using @configuration, I don't find any difference actually. The same way it is working, whether I give it or not.
If you, but in the Spring IOC container, you have to start manually, no?
Right, sir. Right.
In the Spring Boot, it is getting started automatically from that.
Hello sir. Sir, are there components have some special operation like HTTP?
1 minute. Hello, Mr. Rashekar. What are you doing, buddy? Control Z.
I'm printing.
Just to press Control 1.
Arey yaar, please remove that complete stuff. Just to store that return type into a variable. Just keep your cursor at the end, press Control 1, enter. I gave the Eclipse shortcut video. You did not watch that. Enter. Store that. Now you print it. System.out.println get class.get name. Yeah. Next one, guys.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Are the red component have some special behavior? What are theirs?
Special behavior. What special behavior is there?
HTTP, some like repository have some exception propagation
component does not have anything like that. It is used to represent your class as a Spring Bean. As part of component scanning, it will identify. It will represent that class as Spring Bean. No HTTP, nothing.
Okay, sir. ठीक है.
Yeah. All right.
Reactive application means what kind of application there?
Reactive.
Reactive, yeah.
Reactive means non-blocking thread, sir. We'll discuss in future.
Yeah, okay, sure.
So it is asynchronous based execution.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Right.
Sir, please
So-
upload Gradle video, notes, sir.
Prayer notes, I forgot that. I'm uploading now itself. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Sir, one
Please
more
share
thing.
correction.
Maven will you take again, sir, the class, Maven class?
Already video is there for the Maven, right?
No, only one class happened, sir, in that actually by the other trainer. I forgot his name. I attended that last, before Gradle, we had a workshop, no, sir. That's what, no?
Right. Yeah. In future, I will conduct that workshop. Then
Because he didn't teach much, sir. Only just creating the Maven project. He explained group ID, artifact ID, and all. I don't know, because of lack of time, he couldn't explain.
Yeah, it was planned for 1 day workshop, so he has given that.
So it was very limited, sir. Whatever you explained already, the same thing, nothing beyond that.
Yeah, right.
That's why I'm asking, sir.
Sure, sir. We will plan one more free workshop on that. Okay.
Ashok sir, just one request. Can we please use Gradle sometimes at least so that we can get more ideas? Because
Sure, sir.
many companies are using Gradle, sir. Yeah.
I will use. Because of that only I conducted a workshop, right?
Yes, sir. I have attended that. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I will use that.
Yes.
Okay. Fine.
Ashok,
Yeah.
Ashok, do you have any Spring Batch videos in our YouTube channel?
Spring batch concept. No, sir. I don't think so. It's not available.
Okay.
I will explain that in our class.
Okay, fine. Because it's a very useful to the real-time environment.
I will cover that concept.
Okay.
Fine.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, will you use IntelliJ also? Because most of the company using this.
Which one?
IntelliJ.
IntelliJ IDE. Okay, sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Fine, guys. So please practice all these good concepts. Notes uploaded. Gradle notes also uploaded in the portal. Please download that. So tomorrow we'll start with data JPA introduction. See you tomorrow. Please revise all your concepts which we discussed in the Spring Boot. Good night.